Everyone, thank you for joining the info session for the 2025 CEP. We're going to give folks a few more minutes to trickle in before we get started. Awesome. I think we have a good group, so we'll get started with the presentation. Thank you all again for taking your time today out of your day to join us for the information session for the 2025 MIT Climate Energy Prize. We're really excited to have you here, and just to note, our application is currently open for the $100,000 grand prize at cep@mit.edu/apply. Awesome. So first, just wanted to introduce ourselves. My name is Daisy Fang. I'm one of the VPs for Startup Relations, and I'm an MBA student at MIT Sloan.
Super. Lovely to meet everybody. My name is Yasmina. I'm from the UK. I'm also a first-year MBA student at MIT Sloan, but I'm also a dual degree student. So I'm also pursuing a master's in public policy at HKS. And like Daisy, I am a VP of Startup Relations. Lovely to meet you.
Awesome. So for the info session today, we have 4 parts to the agenda. We'll start by giving you all an overview of the Climate Energy Prize. We'll step through the application a little bit more in depth, so you will know what to expect throughout the process. And then we have 2 wonderful alumni with us to do a panel so you can hear a little bit about their startup as well as their journey with CEP. Finally, we'll have some time for Q&A at the end, so then you can ask questions to either our alumni or the startup relations team if you have any questions about the process. Great. So starting with an overview of the Climate Energy Prize, it is the longest and largest university climate and energy competition. So we have been running for 17 years consecutively, and for the 2025 prize, we'll provide over $150,000 in total of non-dilutive cash prizes. In addition, you'll also get to be matched with mentors in the industry, as well as get access to other global student teams that are also working to tackle the climate challenge. So over the past 17 years, we have granted over $3.4 million in cash prizes to date, and our alumni have continued on to do wonderful things, continuing working on their startup, raising over $1.7 billion in funds. So CEP is really a wonderful way to kickstart your entrepreneurship journey. And for the 2025 prize, we have some really exciting sponsors lined up. It's still early on in the process, so we expect a lot more sponsors to join us before the finals that will be happening in the spring of 2025. For this year's prize, similar to last year's, we'll have 9 climate energy treks that you'll have an opportunity to indicate whichever track that aligns most best with your mission and your startup. So we have tracks from built environment, energy, food and land use to transportation. And I want to highlight that these tracks do not affect the judging criteria in any way, but by indicating where your startup aligns with the best, it helps us formulate the resources such as workshops throughout the application process to help you all better prepare for the semifinals and the finals. So there are lots of benefits to participate in the Climate Energy Prize, and we'll highlight a few here. So first, you'll get to join a global startup ecosystem, meet with a community of fellow climate entrepreneurs, and also you'll get to network with past CEP alumni as well as partners. New this year, we're really excited about a proprietary AI tool that the Climate Energy Prize participants will be able to get access to. So the tool is called Jetpack, which is an interactive AI tool that's developed by the MIT Martin Trust Center that will help you work through 24 stages of disciplined entrepreneurship. So you'll be able to ask questions about how to calculate your total addressable market, how do you segment your target customers, and make a really robust commercialization plan. Third, you will also be able to get access to industry mentorship. And for all the teams that are advancing to the semifinals, you'll be matched with mentors who have volunteered to help out with the competition from leading industries. And we'll use the startup track that you indicated that we just went through on the previous page to help match you with the best mentor that is aligned with your interest. We'll also organize activities such as workshops, boot camps, invite-only happy hours, and mock pitches with MIT students to help you get ready for your presentation. Last but not least, we are also offering cash prizes, and you'll have the opportunity to win over $100,000 of non-dilutive funding for your startup. If you are invited to either the semifinals or the finals, you will also receive heavily subsidized travel and lodging costs to make sure that you'll be able to join us in person. So a little bit more detail over on the 2025 application process. So the application is already open. And in the first stage, once you submit your application, our team will screen your application for eligibility for the competition. If your team is eligible, then everyone will be able to proceed to the virtual round. Well, you'll be able to do a virtual pitch to our judges. From there, our judges will select 20 total teams to advance to the semifinals. There will be 10 teams from the US participating in the Boston semifinals pitch, and then 10 teams from international locations to participate in the pitch at Munich in Germany this year. So this is in partnership with the University of Munich, which we are really excited about to be able to put on the semifinals for participants from other parts of the world. And all semifinalists will also receive mentorship support to help you prepare for that stage of the competition. At these semifinals, the first place for each of the non-US and US semifinalists will receive cash prizes as well. From there, 5 teams from each semifinals will advance to the final pitch for the Climate Energy Prize. So total of 10 teams will fly to Boston and give an in-person pitch to the judges and the audience. There, we will award 3 prizes from the grand prize, second place, and third place prize to conclude the competition. In terms of the timeline for the 2025 competition, as I mentioned, the application is already open and you can access it from the link that's displayed on the page. We highly encourage you to apply by the early bird deadline, that is December 2nd. So you'll have early access to the boot camps, workshops, as the Jetpack tool, and have more time to be matched with an MIT students to practice your pitch. This will really give you a lot more time and opportunities to take advantage of the resources that we offer. If you're not able to make the December 2nd timeline, the final deadline to participate in the CEP will be January 10th. And then from there, the virtual rounds will happen the week of February 10th through 14th for the mentors to be matched to any teams advancing to the semifinals in late February. The dates for our US semifinal in Boston is set to be March 7th, 2025. And those who are from other geographies will fly to Munich for the non-US semifinals that will take place on March 14th. Finally, the last pitch competition for the CEP will be the finals that will take place in Boston, April 18th of 2025. So a quick overview of the judging criteria. The judges will be looking for potential climate impact, idea feasibility, solution creativity, and team composition. The main difference between the virtual round and then the later semifinal and final rounds is that the later rounds will also take into account of business plan and economics. So hopefully by the time March, April comes around, you'll have even more time to be able to fully develop your business plan and to incorporate that into your pitch. Awesome. And now I'll hand it over to Yasmina to walk through the application process.
Fantastic. Thank you, Daisy. So I'm going to walk through what seems to be the boring thing, but really the most important. So please do kind of zone in here. So who can apply? We've got a couple of criteria that are very important to keep in mind before and during submitting your application. The first being that your team needs to be composed of 50% students who are either part-time or full-time and currently enrolled. So that's really critical by the final deadline of the application. Individuals can be from any part of the world, but if 50% or more of your team is located in North America, Canada, Central or Latin America, then we will be having you come to the US round in Boston, and teams with other locations will all be over in Munich for our European round. Teams also need to participate in at least one of the tracks that Daisy pointed out to you, but you can also sign up for multiple if your solution is crossing between tracks. Important to note that teams also have to have less than or equal to 100K in dollars of, they must have less than that 100K of funding, external funding received to date. But finally, they do not need to be incorporated at the time of the application. Please do feel free to share further questions in the Q&A section if any of this is unclear, but it's outlined very clearly on the website and also on the application. In terms of the application form, I'm going to give you kind of a high-level overview of what we will ask for, and then also walk you through what the application looks like. But as I said, at a high level, we're going to be asking you about business details. So we'd like to have a high-level pitch, also understand the location of your team and those climate track selections that you have. Second, we'd like to have a pitch deck of about 10 to 15 slides. And then third, we also need a series of disclosure forms from you regarding your capital structure, your IP and revenue to ensure that you are aligning with those eligibility criteria that I mentioned before. In addition, we'd like to have an executive summary of what you have done to date and your planned solution. So understand, what is your startup's motivating problem? What is your proposed solution? What is the core product? What is your commercialization to date? And also some basic team information. And as I said, that's really important regarding the eligibility criteria. An optional piece of material that you can share is a 2-minute pitch video for your business and team. As I said, this is optional, but I'd encourage you to submit something. It's a great practice and supports in the kind of developmental goals that the prize wants to target. So I'm going to switch over now to presenting a PDF version of the application. I'd like to highlight, I'll say it now and I'll say it again, the application should be completed through the interactive Google Forms portal rather than through PDF. But for this moment, I'd love to just walk you through the PDF. Excellent. So this is just a little bit more of a detailed overview of those high-level headings that I shared in terms of what the application is covering. So as you can see here, we're asking for some high-level team information, name, country location, and any kind of websites or materials that you have online. Again, these are optional. And as I said, we'd also like your high-level pitch with 100 characters or less. This may seem tight, but very important to communicate it in a succinct manner. We're also looking to understand your milestones. And then moving to the business details, we want to understand those tracks, which ones you align best with, making sure that you're aligning with a minimum of 1 track. You can also highlight kind of a series of tracks which you align with a different level of priority. And then these disclosure forms that I mentioned before regarding capital structure, revenue, and IP. We're also wanting the pitch deck that I mentioned, which you can submit through the live form, and a couple of key kind of criteria around those disclosure forms that I shared before. Then the kind of more interesting bit, which is the startup information. So as I said, we want to understand, what is your problem statement? What is your why? And then how are you hoping to address this motivating problem with your solution? How you would describe your solution's readiness, what its climate impact is as best you've estimated it to date, what commercialization plans you have or have executed on regarding your business model, who your customers are, what your competitive landscape is, and whether you have a go-to-market strategy, and if you can detail that out to us, and any further future planning, as well as financing plans or previously achieved steps. Finally, there's the basic team information that I outlined, the number of people, what educational institutions they are enrolled at, to make sure that we satisfy that 50% enrolled students, part-time or full-time, in the criteria. And this is largely repetitive based on the number of teams that you have. So I'll switch back to the presentation now. And I'll hand it back to Daisy.
Awesome. Thank you, Yasmina. And we noticed there are some questions coming in, and definitely encourage you all to use the Q&A function and the chat to be able to ask questions. We have team members monitoring, and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. Awesome. So moving on to the next stage of our presentation, we're really excited to showcase some of our CEP alumni that are here with us today. So we have, because it's been the 17 years of the competition, we have lots of alumni that have continued to work on their startup across a variety of different tracks. So we have companies like Ayer Labs that have closed over $130 million in Series C, all the way to companies like Oklo that actually went public last year. So this is really a great way to start your journey in climate entrepreneurship. And now we will go into the alumni panel portion. So today we're really excited to have Dr. Elise Strobeck and Stuart Pena Feliz with us. And I will first ask them both to share a really brief introduction and maybe a little bit on how you became a founder before we diving into learning a little bit more about AeroShield and macro cycle. So maybe Elise, we can start with you for a short intro.
Yeah, excited to be here today. So the Clean Energy Prize was definitely a very pivotal part of AeroShield's journey. But for me, didn't know that I was going to get into entrepreneurship. Actually came from did my undergrad in Wisconsin in mechanical engineering. That was where really, got the bug for renewable energies and as a way to, help combat climate change. And as I joined MIT and a really exciting project actually looking at solar thermal energy harvesting, we were working with this really interesting material known as an aerogel, which had actually been invented by NASA almost 100 years ago as a super porous, ultra lightweight material that can do a lot of different things. And so we were using it to try and insulate a solar thermal energy harvesting device. And as we started to understand the needs of the device, we started to advance with the material. And we actually had a breakthrough on the material's core performance. We created a material that was ultra clear in addition to being super insulating. And so for solar thermal, very exciting. But we started to find that solar thermal wasn't the biggest place that we could have an impact. We started to hear about buildings and windows and this need for actually transparency, clarity with insulation, really hard to do. And that meant that what we had achieved was maybe even more important to get out into the world than we had initially realized. And so that was sort of what drew me into looking at entrepreneurship and the commercialization, and led me to find out about the Clean Energy Prize and make the transition from writing, research decks around the material to, business plans and ways that we could deploy this material in a sustainable and profitable way. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Elise. Stuart, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
My pleasure. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, everyone, calling from all over the world. My name is Stuart Pena. I am the CEO and co-founder of Microcycle Technologies, the venture creating circular plastics with zero carbon emissions. My journey starts all the way back from undergrad, where I majored in chemical engineering. And out of college, I really wanted to learn how energy worked at a global scale. So I ended up working at ExxonMobil for the first few years of my career in a bunch of different roles. But interesting enough, during my last role, while working in a fuel unit, I was the engineer in charge of the project that first fed plastic waste for circularity purposes. And that was my introduction to plastic recycling, where I saw the truth of how chemical recycling works in the oil and gas industry. With that experience, I decided to pivot away from oil and gas and go into something more positive, impactful into the environment. And I went into renewable energy and entrepreneurship, working at a small startup and realizing, hold up, I kind of really like this. That being said, I had no idea how to start a company. Like to this day, I'm still doubtful if I know how to start a company, but I've been picking until I make it. And I decided to apply to MIT Sloan for my MBA to be able to further develop some of the skills, the network, and the relationships that could prove very helpful to start a company. While getting my MBA, I had the honor and pleasure of meeting my co-founder, Dr. John George, who is the innovator of this technology. And when I saw his technology, I thought it was too good to be true with my experience. So I wanted to work with him to show him how things worked in the industry, only for me to realize his technology is not only true, but really good. 3 months after we met, we decided to apply to the Climate Energy Prize, kind of as a way to pressure test if this venture had any legs to stand on. Are people interested on? What are the questions that we need to get answered to really get the data that this is a real venture that can actually become a viable business? And through the Climate Energy Prize, and we'll get into more details, it was the first time it was pressure tested. And when we realized that we didn't have just a piece of carbon, we had a piece of diamond in our hands. So that's a little bit of my background in the journey as to how Microcycle came to be what it is today.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Stuart. Now we'll go back to Elise. We'll go through the next slide where we can dive into a little bit more detail on AeroShield.
Yeah, so this is definitely the all the information all at once. So essentially what AeroShield's mission is we're taking this aerogel material, as I mentioned, developed during my PhD, this unique patented nanostructure. And we're trying to embed it, integrate it into new windows as they're being made to cut energy losses in half. An idea is it's actually 30 to 40% of our building emissions, our energy use, can actually be attributed to energy that was lost through our windows and doors. And so to be able to cut those in half starts to really move the needle on our carbon emissions, but just also on future sustainability. So we're really excited that in 2019, we were part of the Clean Energy Prize, and that was really when we were making small samples of material, about this big, and being able to kind of develop that business case, really demonstrated that fundamental properties, that the cost projections that we had looked very interesting, and the value that we could create in that end product was really phenomenal from an energy efficiency standpoint. We realized the biggest barrier that was left was raising the capital and demonstrating that we could build it at scale at the costs that we predicted. And so that was really the transition that we made out through using the Clean Energy Prize actually as a catalyst to give us that capital that led us. We wouldn't have incorporated, we wouldn't have formed the company that we did without the Clean Energy Prize. And since then, in the past 5 years, we've been able to scale up our manufacturing. We're making, actually just commissioning some of our equipment this week to be able to try and make a 10 square foot sheet of aerogel, and have a team of 25, and have raised almost $30 million in terms of non-dilutive and equity as well. So made a lot of progress, and happy to answer a lot of questions, but definitely the Climate and Energy Prize was a huge catalyst for getting us out of the university and making all of this possible.
Awesome. We'll hand it over to Stuart to learn a little bit more about the products.
Perfect. So the way the microcycle works is that we're able to take plastic waste of any quality, starting with PET and polyester, and we can take those heavily dirty feedstocks available as a waste right now that ends up in landfills or in oceans, or it gets incinerated, and we can divert that waste, where we can take the PET and polyester and selectively extract the polymers that we want, while eliminating contaminants such as PVC or the cotton from polyblends textiles. We take the PET and polyester and we put into a reactor, where we're able to do our proprietary solvogenesis technology to upcycle the polymer into the virgin grade quality. And then afterwards, we're able to do a post-treatment where we can remove colors and other contaminants from the plastics. So we can produce that plastic that can serve as a drop-in solution for all the rigid packaging applications of high value. With this, we're able to create a fully circular economy, where we take the end-of-life waste that has no more further applications and upcycle it into a brand new product. If you go into the next slide, what our product is basically the microcycle PET pellet, which is a virgin grade, produced with 0 carbon emissions, as we're able to use 80% less energy, and the remaining 20% is fully electrifiable with renewable energy to achieve recycling with 0 carbon emissions. That's something that our competitors cannot do today. And because we use 80% less energy, our operational expenditures is significantly lower, allowing us to not need to charge a green premium to be highly profitable to upcycle this plastic waste. So in 2 minutes, that is Microcycle's value proposition to what we bring to the recycling industry.
Awesome. Thank you both so much for not only sharing about your startup, but also giving our potential applicants a glimpse into what it's like to pitch your company. So we'll go into a Q&A section. I have some questions prepared, but if anyone in the audience is interested in asking either Elise or Stuart questions, we'll have time at the end for you to either add it to the chat or unmute and ask them directly. So my first question for you both is, what CEP resources did you find the most helpful, whether that's workshops, network, the mentorship, etc.? And if you can give an example, that would be awesome.
Since I'm on mute, I could go first. But one that really stood out to us because we really needed that help was the mentors. So we got assigned with 2 awesome mentors, both of them who we still keep in touch with today, over a year later. But one of them specifically was a city investment manager, meaning that he was very financially focused, and he is almost single-handedly the reason why we have the pro forma that we have today, where he really helped us and worked with us on being able to develop the financial model of like, okay, what does it look like to scale up our technology? And that's something that we really lacked because we didn't really understand whether it's multiple valuations on hard tech companies, or how do you raise capital, how non-equity and non-dilutive and equity capital, how does the splits work. We didn't have much of an idea pretty early in our journey, and he was the first individual that really helped us understand that. And we do think that's what made one of the differences, because I do remember that was a question that was asked during the finals of the competition. So there were many other things as well, but that is the one thing I did want to highlight, that the mentors were phenomenal for us.
Yeah, I think in a sort of similar vein, I think definitely the networking as a whole was surprisingly valuable. Not because it had value, but because didn't realize how weak my network was before we got into the event. And I think that there are two aspects to that the CEP really helped. I think definitely one on that sort of mentor and players in the ecosystem, different kinds of investors. I mean, we definitely connected with other incubators, other accelerators that also then helped us target, the next transition phase, whether it was, a team building or a manufacturing, something specific, helped us put in contact with a lot of different resources and important people there. And then the other one was also the peer network. I mean, certainly within the MIT ecosystem, you meet a lot of really, fantastic founders who are at all different stages of the journey. But I think CEP also bringing that, with a even broader network of, exceptional founders from all over could come in, and to be able to see those pitches at the same time that I was thinking about how to get better at my pitch. I think that just the network throughout the whole event was, yeah, just kind of phenomenal everywhere, and definitely got a lot of value out of it.
Awesome. That's fantastic to hear. So you all mentioned a lot about the network and the mentorship resources. I was wondering, how does having the visibility and credibility of having placed in the Climate Energy Prize facilitate your fundraising efforts as you continue to work on your startup after the prize?
I love you ask this question because I have a very relevant story to this. So just last month, we signed our term sheet for our seed round. And the lead investor that's leading this round discovered us during the semifinals of the Climate and Energy Prize. And that's where he saw us pitch for the first time. And we actually have been talking since then. So it's been 18 months in the works since March of 2023, when the individual met us and put us through the due diligence process of this VC. So I can single-handedly say that we raised our seed round 18 months later because of the Climate and Energy Prize, or at least a facilitating making that connection, putting us on the stage where we were able to impress at least one investor back then.
Yeah, and I think share similarly that like lots of the connections have ended up being helpful. Definitely for us, it was a place where we learned about the Clean Tech Open, which ended up becoming also like a pretty great transition resource for us. And the other perspective that I can also share is that even now, many years after AirShield has participated, like I still end up connecting with people who like first met and maybe haven't met since that event, and they still remember us. And I think that association of that ecosystem, like they know where they remember us from. So I think bringing that credibility, it's amazing. It's taken AirShield a long time to get to the place where we are, and we've got a long ways to go through the market before we get there yet. And so I think having that sort of continual well to be able to go back to. And then I think, one more thing that I would also add is being an alum of the program, being able to come back and like watch new companies go through it every year, and potentially participate as a mentor or a resource for other companies. I also still get value from that as well. So just want to say that it's a place that I continue to feel welcome in.
And to add to the network point, the winner of last year's Climate Energy Prize actually sits right in front of me in my working space. So we are talking, helping each other out, and still collaborating. So the network goes across the years as well.
That's awesome. Yeah, I did not plan this question, but now I'm glad that I asked it. And it's great. Thank you all for still continuing to be involved with the prize. This is like the community that we're building, and it's thanks to people like you all that continue to give back to the community as well. My next question is more about the pitching process and your interaction with the judges. So Was there any feedback from judges or mentors as you're working to refine your pitch that really challenged your assumption or pushed you to think about your startup differently through participating in the CEP?
Yeah, I can take that one first. I think, you know, certainly seeing a lot of different pitches all at once really, I think, helped me understand that there were things that I hadn't, the assumptions that I hadn't even challenged, like different ways to order the pitch. I think, you know, entrepreneurship, I had taken a lot of courses at MIT before, you know, AirShield really spun out. So it was easy to sort of say, you know, what are the 10 things you need to put in a pitch deck and follow that really prescriptively. And that leads you one way to have a successful deck and have a good first draft to iterate from. But then being able to see other pitches that went just as well go in almost the reverse order, and to start to understand through actually seeing, you know, some of the judges' interactions with other companies, how they asked questions differently because they had presented that information differently. So I think that was some of what really helped me come back and look at my pitch deck and the way that I was telling the story with fresh eyes in a way that, you know, no other resource up until that point had enabled us to do. Yeah.
I agree with that. Partially because I also thought that my way of pitching was always one of the better ones until I had my eyes open in completely different ways. To be fully transparent, I don't remember a lot of the feedbacks from the judges themselves, but what I do remember was the feedback from the mentors. So I talked about one of my mentors. The other one, he was single-handedly responsible for providing a point of feedback that changed our entire structure of how we presented the company. To give you a little bit of idea, we were very kind of like process oriented, where we were like talking about everything else, all the other technologies, and then we came in like the middle of a presentation. It's like, this is microcycle. And he was kind of responsible for telling us, it's like, why are you letting people wait 2 minutes, 3 minutes, halfway through your presentation for them to discover how great you guys are? And he provided us some feedback that really shifted our way of presenting the company in a way that got people excited, still while providing the context and stuff like that. And it was definitely pressure tested during the semifinals. And when we saw that it worked well, it's something that we polished further for the finals.
Awesome. Super helpful. And so we have a big group on the call, and I know some people may still be on the fence about deciding if they should participate or not. So for those who are on the fence, like, what are some advice that you have for the participants, like even if you didn't win?
Apply. The reality is, the only reason we started developing our business plan to the level of detail that is required for an investor to even give us some attention was because of the questions that were being asked through the application process. It forced us to think about topics that we really had not done the work. Yes, we probably all to some extent have done some customer discovery, PMR, and so on. But what about the financial aspects? Where do you see yourself in 5 to 10 years down the line and stuff like that? Like those things that you know you have to answer, but you've never had the time. It forces you to actually dedicate some time to be able to start drafting and developing the business plan. And I can tell you for a fact that for our first probably 6 months that we were doing due diligences with VCs, we were just copying and pasting our responses from the Climate and Energy Prize. Of course, we were polishing it because a lot of things had changed, but like that was our foundation and structure. So I would say that yes, the money is phenomenal. The money is great. It also is part of the reason why we incorporated afterwards. But even if you don't win the prize, just forcing yourself to go through the application process that eventually will help you develop your business plan is one of the biggest wins you can obtain down the line.
I love that. I would also add in that if you're on the fence at all, that it doesn't get easier than the CEP. There is no risk, right? Even if you sign up and you put the application and then show up on the pitch day and you don't quite nail it, right? You don't lose anything. Now, if you're spun out and you're out of the university and you have to raise money to be able to like pay your employees and build your company, and then you go to pitch to an investor, if you show up and you pitch poorly on that day, that does change your future. That can close doors. And so I would say that really it is such that it's so rare to find a space that is so welcoming of companies at this stage with resources that are targeted to it. Again, where it is that safe place to practice, where the worst cases is that you just feel like you gave a bad presentation, and you got lots of feedback and lots of areas that you can focus on to improve. So would definitely say that if you're on the fence, would encourage you to consider applying. If for no other, just for the experience. I think it's hard to get that anywhere else. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you both. Yeah, so definitely very low stakes, and we encourage you to apply. And just to reiterate, for the application, you only need to be eligible to be able to go through to the virtual round where you will get actionable feedback from the judges. So definitely a great way to get experience, get some reps in early on. And my last question for you both is, if you could go back in time and participate in the CEP again, is there something that you would do differently, whether that's, spend more time in a specific area or take more advantage of another, specific resource that you wish you had more time to do?
Yeah, I think from my side, I definitely would take, I think, bigger risks. I think that there were things that I had an intuition that might be more successful, for example, with the audience in a pitch, just the way that we talk about, what we've accomplished. And I remember, and AirShield, made it to the finals. So as we got to the finals, I remember just being, so nervous of just like, oh my goodness, I just gotta not say the wrong thing. That's my goal. And now I think I would look back at it and I would go, wow, this is what a great opportunity, what a great audience to reach people. I think I would think about my purpose a little bit more, maybe a little bit less worried about what people think and more worried about, getting good information for my organization. And then I think the other thing that I would say is, I don't think that I allocated enough extra time around the CEP to take advantage of all the resources. I think that I could have put more time in and gotten more out. And I just had too many different priorities. So I think I should have shuffled some things later in time, focused on this, and maybe taken even more advantage of it than we were able to.
I like that one. I have two ones that comes to mind, a funny one and a more serious one. The funny one is, we had a different company name. We were not known as Macrocycle. We were known as Simon Cycle back then. And the first question we always got asked is, who's Simon? It's like, I don't know. So the first thing I would have wished is that we would have come up with a more permanent name, because sometimes people do remember us, but they see Macrocycle, like, I've never seen that before. So we lost a little bit of that effect where people could remember us just by changing our name. But everyone changes name, things pivots all the time, so that's not an issue. But that's a funny one, at least for us. The more serious one is more of, I wish I had practiced more and more pitching, and not from the perspective of me being comfortable on stage or me like messing up some lines here and there. It's more that I was looking at my slide decks from when I presented back then. And there's some things that I look at it now, is like, how did I feel comfortable presenting that? Like, no one can read the numbers, this doesn't make sense, and all those things. And I feel those are things that would have been more pressure tested if I had pitched more and more and more. Maybe just asking some peers, some friends, some professors, advisors, hey, can you hear me pitch? And like have them critique as much as possible. Because yeah, I was looking at those slides and I felt a little embarrassed.
Those are fantastic reflections. And to your point about practicing pitches, this is like one area that we are hoping to work on this year as well. So recruiting lots of MIT students across different parts of our ecosystem to serve as volunteers to help our participants practice their pitch and give informal feedback. So hopefully that will be helpful. Now, if anybody has questions for Elise or Stuart, feel free to unmute yourself and ask them directly. Otherwise, we'll field some questions from the Q&A chat.
Hi, I had a general question. So, my name is Rishikesh, and sorry, am I speaking or is someone speaking else?
No, go ahead.
Okay, should I? Okay, yeah. So, obviously, firstly, thank you so much for organizing this session. I think it's really, really helpful for us to have a certain goal or a certain thing to look for, and in terms of we can, really get into innovation and have a very powerful impact when it comes to climate. So, first of all, thank you so much. Secondly, my main query here is, so in registration as a team, if we are not incorporated as a startup, But in the midway of the competition, if we decide to get or incorporated as a startup, is that a fine thing?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, that's all. Thank you so much.
Hey guys, thank you so much for the presentation. I really enjoyed it. Like, really inspiring to see you guys go into such great startups and accomplish so much. So, my question was to do with how you can choose your topic or like the climate track that you want to work with. So, like, there are so many diverse tracks, and we don't really, like, for example, I don't have enough knowledge technically, like, as to what exactly I want to pursue. So, could you please advise me about how we can go about that?
I can take this one. Sorry about that.
All right.
Thank you for your question. You make a great point. So why do we have these tracks? We have these tracks because we've determined that kind of these are the key pillars that the Climate Energy Prize wants to focus on, and through creating this community, as Daisy and the team outlined, through providing these resources, we kind of are all pushing towards these goals of targeting climate change. We place them to make sure that ideas are aligning with these categories of climate impact, but really it's on the team to kind of identify where they connect, where you connect best, and certainly these are very big topics and themes of decarbonization in themselves. So what we would look to see from the team is kind of elaborating through those questions we have in the application why you've selected those tracks. And that might be directly or indirectly in your description of your motivating problem and the solutions that you are pursuing. So that's really kind of on the team to think about, but that's why we have those tracks and the purpose they serve.
Thank you so much. Yeah, that answers my question.
Awesome. Do we have any more questions for Stuart and Elise about their experience in CEP? So I see one question that's coming through in the chat that's interesting. So for Stuart and Elise, can you give some tips about networking in the clean tech industry broadly, I guess, both within CEP as the structured mentorship and networking, but also more broadly for people who are looking to build out their network?
I can go first. I think that networking becomes a lot more effective when you're intentional with your time. And by that, I mean, what is it that you're looking for? Yes, I don't recommend you to not be talking to people if they're not helping you with what you want, but come in with a mindset or with a question or with something, with a need of what are you looking for? And sometimes that's just like entrepreneur experience. You're trying to network with other entrepreneurs, and that's perfectly fine. But like, have more of a target in mind, have a plan in mind, compared to I'm just gonna show up and talk to anyone that comes here with no idea and goal. And the reason I say that is because when you start fundraising and you want to talk to investors, you definitely need to have a plan in mind. So the climate tech community is big and small at the same time. So being effective with your time and like your approach will create a generally good impression that can actually carry a good reputation in the industry. I've only been an entrepreneur for less than 2 years, and it is crazy how literally as of last week, I went to a conference in Europe where there were 300 participants, and I already knew 10% of them. So the climate tech community is not that big. So being intentional with your time and give a good impression will go a long way.
Awesome. Very helpful. Another question we had is, what is a typical technology readiness for product and technology that apply for the CEP?
Absolutely. So I'll take this one, but also would love to hear from Elise and Stuart what how you would describe the technological readiness of your solutions at the time of application. Oh, I'm looking forward to this response, Stuart. We'd like to highlight the fact that we do have a question in the application form asking applicants to describe their technological readiness. This is very much for us to understand the stage that you are at, but does not put a pressure to have achieved, a very high maturity at all. It can still be at more of the idea stage. What we want to see evidence of is kind of a more substantial idea with thought and reflection around these different dimensions of business model and future planning. And as Stuart said before, this exercise of writing down these thoughts through the application is excellent in itself. So please do apply, even if you don't immediately have those answers. Sitting down and putting through the application, you'll surprise yourself with, how much you can put together. I'll hand over now to Elise and Stuart to answer kind of where you were at in terms of your technological readiness.
Alrighty, I'll take it first. I laugh because back then we were two guys in decking a dream. That's as simple as I can describe it. TRL were probably 3 going into 4, but the crazy part is that our technology wasn't even anywhere physically, geographically as to where we were. So we were not actively working with the technology hands-on while going through this entire process. So if anyone ever asks us afterwards, it's like, can we go see? Do you have this specific data? We couldn't do that. So we were pretty early on from a TRL3 perspective.
Yeah, I would say for AeroShield, we were probably at a pretty similar stage. I would say that I see it as like we were in the sweet spot of we had proven out just enough of the technology to answer all the fundamental questions of like, is this possible? But everything that was left was more of the the market and the logistics of how you optimize those things. And that was where we realized that getting information from the outside world, we were starting to answer questions that required information from how other people would interact with our material and our solution and how they would value it. And so that felt at the right point in time to start to get that external stream of information. I would also just say that we probably, when we applied, thought our TRL level was higher than it was. I think, right? You learn things as you go through the process, but we had a pretty good demonstration, if I think about it from a research perspective. And then immediately after we spun out of the university, within a year of going through the CEP program, we got out into the real world and realized that our technology was a whole level behind, just from we had to not be able to do it once, but repeatedly enough that those results were consistent. But we didn't know that until we went through the CEP, got those resources and made that progress. Yeah.
At least that's a phenomenal point, because thinking back, I think we apply on the TRL4, but right now that we're past it, I can say with confidence we were not TRL4.
And that's important learning. Better to learn that early on. Yeah.
Absolutely. Great. So I know we have a few minutes left. So one last really quick question. We have applicants asking about what was the time commitment that you felt like CEP was back then? And I know, Elise, you mentioned that you wish you had put more time into it. So it sounds like there is some flexibility around time commitment based on other priorities.
I have to think for a minute. It was long enough ago now. I have to let me reflect. Yeah.
I'll go in the meantime. So applications is as much as you put in is what you get out. So theoretically speaking, especially now with ChatGPT or Jetpack, I guess theoretically speaking, you can spend 10 minutes and answer all the questions. I don't know. I haven't used said to apply to the CEP before, but that's not the quality that will be demanded, or the quality that you should have for yourself to really be able to understand your business. So I will say that you can definitely find yourself putting more and more hours, and you're never going to reach the end of it. So you're going to have to choose where to stop, like what's a trade-off that you want to take advantage of. I would say that I took my minimum number of classes so I could focus more on the company. So I would say that for CEP specifically, I was easily putting 5 to 10 plus hours of work a week, which I guess is not too much in the grand scheme of things, but like I was definitely dedicating multiple hours every single day to be able to think about the questions. But I was also independently of CEP doing my research, interviewing companies and stuff like that. So like, just because you're applying to CEP doesn't mean your business necessarily stops, or like the things that you need to do for your business. So could that have been lower for us? Absolutely, but we really care about it. Maybe that's partially why we were one of the winners. So we invested a good amount of hours into it, and it paid off.
Yeah, I would say it's probably a similar time investment. I think what I'm having trouble with is we were trying to apply to multiple things at the same time. So even the application process, like, was easily 20% of my week's time, like at least a full day out of 5. But not all of it was purely on CEP, and not all of it was like, we had funding through the Deshpande Center at MIT. So a lot of the deliverables, like the slides that I was putting together for the CEP, I could reuse. I think so from that standpoint, yeah, I think the 5 to 10 hours a week is a good estimate.
Great. Well, thank you both so much for a wonderful panel discussion. This has been really helpful, and I'll speak for myself. It's been fantastic to learn about your journey and where AeroShow and MacroCycle are today from when you participated in the CEP. So thank you so much for your time, and thank you everybody for being here today. Our team will stick around for a few more minutes if you have more questions on the application process itself. But yeah, so the application is out live, and you can find the application itself at the link. You can also contact us at cepapp@mit.edu for any questions that you have.
Elise, good to see you again. And to everyone applying, best of luck. And remember the most important thing, have fun. If you're not having fun, you're doing it wrong.
Awesome. Thank you all.
Hi everyone, thank you so much for joining. I am Gabriel. I am one of the managing directors of the prize. We really appreciate your time, and we really want you all to apply. Just wanted to clarify one thing on timing, and like the deck that you submit. So the deck that you submit for the application, and what you are going to write about your business and how it goes, like you will have a chance to work on that, like from the time you apply to the time that you present. And so all these to say, it doesn't have to be 100% perfect by the time you apply. We do expect you to take some time to think through these, like write it carefully, like obviously like back your findings with customer findings, and do your homework and research. But we really want you to take advantage of the resources we have to help you improve your pitch, your presentation, and your overall business model. So yeah, just wanted to say that, and thank you all again for participating.
Great. So I see one more question on if we can have an initial pitch for the early bird and then go more in depth and submit it again before the final deadline.
Absolutely. So the way it works is we'll take your initial pitch, we'll review it, we'll make sure you're eligible, that you have a complete application, and that your startup is aligned with climate, right? And overall with the criteria. But we won't per se at the time of reviewing like make a judgment on whether you should pitch at the virtual round or not. We're looking more for a complete application and for you being eligible. What that means is that, when you pitch during the virtual round, you don't have to use the same pitch or like submit it to us again. You'll have a chance to like share your screen, and you can have like a brand new pitch deck that you've been working on, say since, December that you did your early bird application all the way to February, right? So you'll have like a couple of months where we'll provide some support for you to improve that pitch, and then you can, of course, provide a new pitch. At the end of the day, the most important part is your pitch, not that much the written application. Like we do look at the written application to make a judgment on, like, help the judges understand who's going to go through the next stage. But your pitch and what you present during the virtual round and eventually semifinals and finals is the most important part.
Awesome. So we are at time today, but thank you all so much for joining, and feel free to email us with any additional questions that were not answered during the session today. Thank you. Have a great rest of your day.
Thanks so much, everyone.